There's just 1 minute to showtime.
The engines are on.
The following program is brought to you in living color.
When they wrote up the systems and the rule set that we use, did working people get to write a line? What class of men on pen and paper jotted down their clues? With capital the heart of their design. When 90 million want a thing, but some shareholders say no. Which class of people get to have their way? The people read the fine print, say that this thing has got to go, and we'll start writing a new contract here today. Don't you know that hundreds will work and one man keeps the money? They don't think they gotta tell us why. When they say the new social contract, all the bosses will be gobsmacked and everyone will want a sign. Oh, yeah, everyone will want a sign.
All right. It always takes a minute to get everything working in harmony. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Social Contract, where we will be discussing this week's fresh hell and a few other things, hopefully, to not be only election centric, because I know that's what everybody's talking about right now. But that's what's going on right now, so you kind of can't avoid it. We got kind of lucky as far as that goes, because it took up until this last couple of weeks for anything to start happening, which was very weird. So it's not really that big of a surprise that it all just started happening rapid fire. But thank you for joining us. We are also now broadcasting live on Twitch. So if you have Twitch, jump on over there and give us a follow. It's a brand new account. I am here with my illustrious world traveling co-host, Mr. Mayor Jared, who is going to have some interesting stories for us today. Just right off the top, just because it's the elephant in the room, kind of literally, Donald Trump is back on Twitter. And I was never really the big person to think that like his presence made all that big of a deal. People really thought that he was like always inciting riot and all this kind of thing using Twitter. But
I got screamed at for suggesting that kicking him off Twitter was not really like, even if back when he was still on, like the kicking him off wasn't going to be a huge win even if you did it, because like that's not where power comes from. And I don't know, he's been gone, now he's back. Has that changed a lot of things?
Yeah, he and Shmilan had their big cool guy summit yesterday on Twitter, and the comment on that, I will read you a comment really quick from one of our best internet commentators, Drill, who described it as two fat dipshits pissing on each other's shoes, only on X. And that's what it was. I didn't listen to it because I had other shit to do. Jared had a different version of it, of what happened.
I did not know. People always, they're like, oh, you're the one at the party, you're always talking about politics. All you ever care about is what's going on with politics and the news. And then more often than you would imagine, like I am on the internet to see that, oh, there's like some kind of, I guess he's back online. And then the people who are around me like, yeah, we've been talking about that all day. How did you not know? And I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not in a circle that actually looks at that kind of stuff. Didn't know he was back on Twitter, and I didn't know about the Cool Guy Summit until it was already happening.
Cool Guy Summit, yeah.
And I only heard like 4 seconds of it, because I saw a tweet that was like, it was like list format, all the problems going on. Number one, like you cannot listen to it directly from Twitter. Number two, the YouTube link actually goes to a crypto scam. Number three, the thing, and I'm like, oh shit, things are really going badly for them. So I just go like Trump talk, beep, oh, there it is. Here it is. I'm listening to it. It took me 1 second. It's right off of his channel. So I ended up listening to 5 seconds of it 5 seconds more than I would have heard in the first place because people are for some reason lying about not being able to hear it. Like why is that the strategy? The strategy is to pretend there were technical issues. Like, well, there weren't. If there were, it would be funny, but there weren't. So why did you make that up?
Yeah, my favorite take on it was like people automatically were like, "We're gonna black out on Twitter. We're gonna
I
turn
saw
off
that.
Twitter."
Like, YouTube is going to block the. I'm like, what the? What? Why?
It's like, you got him now, guys. You got him. Okay, no more president. It's happening for real.
Elon Musk is not actually a free speech warrior, but when you do this shit or pretend to do this shit, you make him look like one. Like,
Right.
we're gonna make sure no one.
It's just it's like people are putting so much emphasis on this thing and both sides of it. And it's just like, at this point, like Trump does not want the job. I think it's very clear that neither one of them do. They just want to be, celebrities, and they just want to be like top celebrity who could be the most celebrity. And that's what this comes down to. And, I don't even feel like at this point, like he's even really trying. He's just like, well, whatever, like maybe it will, maybe it won't. So, just, we're just to anticipate more of that. Why we bring it up is we're not going to sit here and harp on it forever because it'll happen again. But,
it didn't matter. What do we even talk about?
Yeah, right. Like he seems to think that like the world like starts. I think what it is, and I'm not even joking. I think it's like a father figure thing with him because I think he feels like I'm gonna walk in this guy's footsteps, and I've got so much more money and people like me so much more. I'm sure of it. That's where this is coming from. And what pisses me off so bad about these asshole billionaires is like, okay, we get it. You're fucking desperate for somebody to S your D already. Like, would you just like get over it and just hand everybody a bunch of money and then everybody will like you? Okay, like that's all it's got to do. All you got to do. I know you can get into every single person's bank account on this fucking planet. Just put some money in everybody's account, and then okay, now you have friends. Are you happy now? You didn't even have to work for it. Everybody loves you. So that's
talking about things that don't move the needle either. I don't know what actually does because every election you say I don't even know what moves the needle anymore, and then every election that becomes more true.
Less and less.
Like no one's moving any opinions. Everyone, I say like just hold the election now because like I don't know who is really like changing. But then I guess convincing people isn't really the point anymore. It's about who can get more of their team to just show up and do it because minds never change. You just have to get as many people who are inclined to vote in one direction to show up at the polls. That's what I've been like. I'm suddenly, when it was still Biden going to be the candidate, I had very little in energy or interest for looking at what is even happening in the election because it's like, well, nothing's freaking going to change. Let's just wait out, and then in November we'll check on in again. Now that Harris is in the slot, I see people pretending as if a change has happened. And now I'm over here yelling, no, nothing has changed. Everything is, if you were going to vote for Biden, you were like the policy, they're the same administration. Why are we pretending that things are different now? And we had the,
we talked about that a lot in our last episode, that it's like she's going to keep the same cabinet of people. It's all the same people. There's all the same people are supporting her. It's like, it's literally a scenario as if the president became incapacitated and the vice president had to step in. She was not elected to this position. There was no talk about any of that happening. There was no primary, nobody primaried her. It's just, she just stepped into it as though the scenario were, that the president were incapacitated. So I guess we're just rolling with it. Anybody just does whatever they want at this point.
And I'm seeing a surprising number of, it's not actually surprising because I think people were kind of just looking for an out. Like, okay, I know I'm going to vote this way anyway. People who are still invested in electoral politics and still think that like it really matters and it's going to change things. But they needed some kind of excuse they can now dump all negative feelings on Joe, who isn't running, and then all positive
back.
Then all positive feelings can be dumped on Kamala, as if Kamala's been like secretly fighting for all of these progressive interests like the whole time, and she's going to continue. Like we've now had two occasions where Harris has been protested at. Oh, I forgot. I had a better button for this. Where is it? I can't find it. Nicolette, click on the. There was a better framing of this that we found, but I forget where it is.
Was it?
We've now had two Kamala Harris events where she's getting protested by. This is a very interesting one. We've had.
Here it is. They're not labeled. So you're just gonna pick it first on. Is this the one you wanted?
Home screen. Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah.
We're a little bit bigger. We've had two Kamala protests now where mid-rally she gets chanted "Free, free Palestine," like the same kind of stuff that was going on beforehand, and we were all like, "Yeah, freaking get them! They should not be able to do a rally like in peace. They should be
Right.
disrupted every single time. AOC should be disrupted. Cory Bush should be disrupted. Like every single Democrat politician who says they care about this shit." And the result that we've had is the first time Kamala was just like, she said, "I'm talking," like not super
I'm
graceful.
speaking. It was
Yeah, I'm speaking.
yeah.
And then
And
again,
that hit the memes immediately.
in my home city of Phoenix, they had a rally the other day while I was out of town. Thank goodness. I wasn't gonna go, but I had some friends who were like, "We're going, yeah!" And I'm like, "How do you?" Like these
Here's a
people
good
are
way to
real.
lose friends.
Oh, I'm never gonna like. I would never freaking break a friendship over this nonsense because it really just doesn't matter. And it's just like that was me 5 years ago. I just was more into the brainwashing, and I've tried to shake myself out of it. But she responded to the protests in Phoenix, more kindly. The things that she said were nicer, and I've pulled up a tweet over here because Nick says it well. These, quote, progressive frauds are not mad at Kamala for being pro-genocide. They're upset because Kamala isn't good at lying to the left about being pro-genocide. Because you'll see what he's responding to you is, it's freaking Kyle Kalinske, of course. Horrible. All she had to do was say, "I hear you. When I'm president, we'll have a permanent ceasefire. We're gonna stop the war and bring peace." All of which would be lies. Like, that's not saying change your policy. It's saying lie to us more effectively so we can, like, have a better time mentally voting for someone who we know has the exact same policy as the guy we were threatening to not vote for before. They're also doing this in August when there is plenty of time to try and, quote, push them left. Like, if you declare you're going to be voting for someone 6 months before you're actually supposed to vote for them, you're basically just telling them, change nothing you could do. You could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and you wouldn't lose any votes.
They don't bother. It's so weird. They don't bother lying anymore. There was always a societal structure based around for decades about, oh yeah, they're just lying. They're just lying. We know that they're lying. And it's just sort of like that just stopped. They don't even bother to lie anymore. They just straight up be like, no, it's like literal, like, we're going to do things the way we didn't do them. Go fuck yourself.
Say a better, different lie to trick more rubes into
Right.
going out and
Nobody
voting for you
cares.
for shit we all know you aren't going to do. Kamala tells another protester in Arizona that her and Biden are I heard this. I hadn't heard the line where she says, "We're working around the clock." That was her words. Working around the clock to get
Meanwhile,
a ceasefire
cut to
deal
his
done.
weekend at Bernie'sing on a beach somewhere, Delaware or some shit. It literally was gross. He was like, "I'm a fucking corpse on this goddamn cot." It was gross. Like like when I saw it, I was like, that doesn't look like lounging. That looks like propped up corpse. But
He's very, very, very old and very disabled. I'm not being mean. That's just literally what it is. They gave Israel more money to buy U.S. weapons today. So, like, the day after, she's talking about working around the clock. Like, never mind the last 10 months of no clock working around of.
Yeah.
We have U.S. releases $3.5 billion to Israel to spend on U.S. weapons and military equipment months after Congress appropriated. And then you're like, well, we'll push them left. We'll just get people to go. We'll get these same Democrats to go farther left. Cory Bush. She's out. Sorry, the people were going to put all the squad members who were going to push us left and do all these wonderful things in their respective positions. Yeah, they're all just out now. Like all the people who were never going to do shit in the first place, but
Right.
who maybe you could have, but what about blank and blank? Yeah, they're just out. They'll either redistrict them so their position no longer exists, or they will spend. Cory Bush's election was the most expensive House race ever. The more money was spent on this one House race, a primary, than in any other House race ever in the history of the country. Why? Because a lobbying group called AIPAC, who is the Israel lobby, decided they don't like Cory Bush because she didn't even really like speak out against the thing as much as she's like, "Hey everybody, let's be reasonable about this." Like, nope, not good enough. We're pushing the big red button. You're out of here as the candidate, and now Wesley Bell is our anointed person.
And let's not overlook the point that Kamala Harris has received over $5 million from AIPAC.
And that's the
Trump,
money you get to hear about. That's what you get to
that's
see.
that's just from like what you could track openly. And Trump has received over $1 million. So if I was him, I'd be like, "Where's the money?" at this point. Like, you're going to give her 5 and you're not going to give me more than that. So that almost kind of tells you where they feel like the leadership situation is going. And I think what it is the reason that they don't make up the lies anymore, and why we're seeing this trending this way is because really we're in a situation now where things are so polarized that there's really no fence sitting anymore. That used to be like a whole cross section of the public. There
You
used
got to
to be
declare
people,
your support 8 months in advance.
yeah. There used to be people who felt like needed convincing. Like where the news, the local, like the CNN would go to some diner somewhere in shitfuck, wherever of America that you never heard of,
And
and
talk
then
to
they'd be
me.
like, let's talk to both sides, and the people at the diner, like, both sides were always conservative. And then they'd be like, I don't know, I think maybe I need a little more convincing. And it's like, for people who are ignored like us. And it's like, so there was always this cross section of the public that like were, that they really wanted to appeal to and bring over. Both would kind of try to woo over to their side. But things are so polarized. Like, if you know who you're going to vote for, you know who you're going to vote for, or if you're not going to vote. So they don't even bother with the gray areas anymore. And I think that's how we ended up in this, like, very black and white version of events.
The concept of demanding something for your vote has gone out the window. Like, you're called selfish and like, you grow up. And it's like,
oh yeah,
what for?
yeah.
For
Or
expecting
you're a what is it, like a one policy voter or
single
something.
issue voter.
Yeah, one issue voter, and it's like that couldn't possibly. That's not even a thing. Like, you can't possibly only have one issue on your mind. That's not how anything works. Like, at the same time that we're crumbling as a society and being like literally like capitalism to death. At the same time, there are horrible things going on abroad that we are behind. It's not possible to be one. I mean, I guess if you're just really into yourself, then you're one version of it. But eventually, this stuff comes back. It doesn't go away. You have to look at the whole picture if you want to consider yourself like educated on the situation. And it really doesn't matter what part of the political spectrum you're on. You just have to look at more than one issue about what's going on. And then if you decide you're going to vote for one of these clowns, vote for them, I guess. But
My
I think they do
final
it for fun too, though. I think I don't know, like it's like a bandwagon effect, and I feel like that's even more of an issue because now people who were before, like when it was Joe, people were like upset, like more of the liberal, like not like hardcore "We Love Joe" liberals, but the liberals who were I don't think probably people should get murdered for no reason. Those people are now like, fuck it all the way. Like, I don't care. I am voting for Kamala 100%. Like, so it's just like these people, like, where did this, and they very, very much adopted very conservative talking points, and attitudes and behaviors, like mocking Palestinians online at this point, and making up weird religious AI memes, Jesus hugging Kamala. So that's real. I've seen it. I didn't bring it on here because, for
the
God's sake.
propaganda machine has been in like overdrive, and it does work to a degree. I mean, it worked on me previously. That's why I try not to like. Please, if you're listening to this, never think that Jared just thinks he's like better and smarter than people. The reason I have such a reaction to this is I know I'm not, because 5 years ago I would have been doing the exact same shit. I mean, I did it for Obama. I was like 17, but I still we got fully swept up in that. When you look back, and if I approach with the same critical eye that I try to approach things now, the Obama administration, I would have a lot of the same criticisms. Who completely destroyed Syria, who destroyed Libya, who continued ratcheting stuff up. The same wars we're talking about now, he kept it going. He started a couple of them,
Wars, yeah.
depending on who you're thinking about.
And I think what it comes down to is, I was thinking the exact same boat. But I think what it comes down to is, I think probably in both of our cases, we would say we weren't asking questions, or we weren't asking the right questions. It was identity politics all the way.
Well, it used to make sense when they'd say, "Look, there's two sides, and you have to pick one. And that's just it."
Right.
And then once you accept that premise, it's very easy to funnel you into, well, we can either vote for him and feel bad about it, or vote for him and feel good about it. And I don't want to feel bad, so
yeah. So it was identity all the way, and that was really, and I think that broke for a lot of people, not like a majority of people, obviously, but then where we now see that the left, the true left, is that the Hillary Trump thing. That was kind of where people were like, wait a minute, both of these options are really fucking bad. And I think that really kind of woke people up because we were, very gung ho for Obama for a lot of years. We'd be like, oh, Dad, you'll take care of us. He cried a little in a thing when a bunch of kids got murdered. He's great, so that.
I was full on for Hillary. I had Trump derangement syndrome, and
Oh, yeah.
like for the first year of his presidency,
Yeah.
it's like through that was the time period that I was kind of figuring things out.
Yeah, and
But
I was the person that literally had CNN running all day long. Like CNN was on all day long, and it's like, why? Like, what's I like this? So it's like, yeah, we're not hypocrites. When we welcome people, we're not trying to turn people away. From the awareness movement here. It's just that when the you pull the mask off, when Scooby Doo pulls the mask off all of a sudden, and it's like, wait, it's two people under this mask. It's both of them. They're both here right now in the same body. Then you start, things start, it's like, wait, this is everybody's fault, and it's because that we don't have, you never heard Democrats going or Republicans going, we need a strong Democratic Party. You never heard that, but you always heard that from Democrats saying about the Republicans. And it's like, what the hell are you talking about?
There's a Nancy Pelosi quote.
Yeah, we get up to this point where it's just sort of like you realize the uniparty thing is not like a myth. It's real because we're in the dream state of Reaganomics, which is what the whole Enshittification thing is. This is what is supposed to happen when you turn the government control over to corporations.
My final beep on Kamala, and then I want to talk about Venezuela's short update. If you are in any way concerned that maybe she's been working behind the scenes, you see it's this weird, I didn't read aloud from it, but in the Al Jazeera article, they talk about how it's like two parallel worlds where on one hand, they're attempting to communicate to the base that, oh, we're doing everything we can to stop this nasty genocide. So you can stop seeing these sad pictures on your phone, while at the same time assuring Israel, because Israel will happily, you were talking about Trump not getting quite as much money. If the Democrats prove to be the less effective Israel funder, they will happily switch over to, like, they're both arguing over who is a bigger Zionist right now.
Right.
Like, so they have U.S. officials went line by line through arms shipments to Israel with defense minister to rebut Netanyahu's delay claim. Basically, Netanyahu was like, the U.S. they're delaying weapons shipments, but so it's not even that they're not shipping the weapons, it's that they're not shipping them fast enough. And the U.S. is like, oh, no, allow us to prove just how fast we are not delaying anything. We are sending more weapons than ever, in fact. Like, you have two different people trying to blow more of Gaza up in a short amount of, like, trying to speed run this shit. And it's not that Israel, like, controls America. Like, I've seen people who are like, oh, America isn't even really, it's the globalists. It's the global ruling class doesn't give a shit about any of these nations. And when it's useful to use Israel as a cudgel, they will do so. When it's useful to use America as the cudgel, they will do that. When it's, frick, Saudi Arabia, like, when it seems to not quite line up with this, when America seems like it's, quote, under attack, there is no nation above us. Israel is not secretly, like, puppet mastering the U.S. has no power over. You use Israel to money launder your dirty, dark money influence back into America. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Venezuela.
Exactly what's going on.
Venezuela still exists. There will never be a big cut dry end to these things because, like, the Juan Guaido thing, the previous coup attempt just kind of like fizzled out and you didn't really hear about it. And then, there's going to be an election and you kind of hear about it a little more. And this one is interesting.
As long as they have the resources that they have, that they will not, play ball with America and just give it, that's always going to be a relevant issue to our political system.
They're only second to, like, Russia in terms of just amount of shit under the Venezuelan soil that various industrial things have needs for.
Well, and also Nigeria, we talked about that before, that
Yeah.
Nigeria has a massive amount of uranium just under, scraped some dirt away, uranium, like the best in the world. And they're like, no. They told America and France, like, on very certain terms, no. So,
The power in France. The CNE turns over electoral data to Supreme Court, and U.S. walks back Gonzalez recognition. Gonzalez is the new Guaido, which is always funny because they're like, well, who won, Maduro or Gonzalez? I'm like, well, I thought it was Guaido. Isn't he the current president? Like, shouldn't he be handing over? Where's he? Has anyone asked what Guaido's opinion is on all of these things? Now, he got hired as a Miami adjunct professor, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Mexico City, Mexico, August 6th, so not too long ago, 2004. Venezuela's National Electoral Council, the CNE, President Elvis the names are great in this whole article. President Elvis Amoroso delivered the electoral evidence requested by the country's Supreme Court of Justice, the TSJ, including detailed voting records and totals. The TSJ demanded the electoral authorities' full results in accompanying documentation follows a request by President Nicolas Maduro for the country's highest court to clarify and validate the July 28 electoral process in order to ease the tensions surrounding the outcome. This is a point that kind of gets lost in some of these South American coups, also in Bolivia, where to just use a non-Venezuela example, because it's basically the same playbook, the same CIA trying to do it. After Evo Morales was accused of faking election results, his first reaction was to say, "Let us do the election again. Let us have a revote," basically. And could you imagine if you are this ultimate evil dictator who is trying to, with an iron fist, fake election results, and your reaction was to say, "That's awesome. Let's audit this election. Let's get some more eyes on this stuff." Like, that's not what you would do if that was your strategy. And you can always argue, well, it's his own corrupt Supreme Court and it's his own blah, blah. It's like, well, apply those kind of criticisms to America, and then I'll take what you have to say a little bit more seriously. The CNA declared, oh yeah, Venezuela has like an automatic, it's like 52% of the vote is automatic, and all of these various protections that the U.S. doesn't even do. CNE declared Maduro the winner of the July 28 election in its most recent update, with 51.9% of the vote compared to 43.8% of the vote for U.S.-backed opposition candidate Edmundo Gonzalez. That's another thing. It's like, why is he faking an election to win by like the same kind of margins that the U.S. wins in? Like, these don't even look like fishy election results. There are, like, you'll look at frickin' Turkmenistan's phony baloney nonsense, and the U.S. never calls that out because they're an ally. So you're allowed to win with 90% of the vote.
Hey, let me interrupt you real quick. At least in my feed, you're frozen.
Am I frozen?
Yeah, you're frozen. I can hear your voice, but you're frozen, and my camera went down. And it said that the connection was down. So apologies to everyone. We've got American internet here. So hold on, we put you off screen real fast and try to pop you back on.
I say, hey chat, am I broken?
Ah, there you go. Yeah, and I was about to shout out the chat here in a minute, but now, okay, now
my monitor stuff never left. But
okay, all right, please continue.
The fun of streaming is always being like, it looks weird to me, is it weird to you? Or it looks perfect to me, is it
right? To you? Yeah. American internet, yo, that's the way it is.
The hardline opposition coalition backing Gonzalez, led by far-right political activist Maria Corina Machado, has disputed the results and alleges it was the victim of a massive fraud. This is from a website called Venezuela Analysis, by the way, and you can probably tell by it calling things like U.S.-backed opposition. It definitely has a slant to it, like every bit of reporting. The electoral body has not publicly released the detailed results broken down by Voter Center on its website, which remains out of service. Meanwhile, the opposition has set up a parallel domain, purportedly including more than 80% of voting records from polling stations gathered by its electoral witnesses on Election Day. So the opposition won't release data, and the government, their website is down. Neither looks great. National Assembly President and former Maduro campaign chief Jorge Rodriguez pointed to several inconsistencies in the opposition's electoral evidence, suggesting that the materials provided by the opposition were forged. The United Socialist Party of Venezuela has avoided publishing its own tallies, with internal sources alleging an abundance of caution to protect the legitimacy of their documentation. Upon receiving the CNE data, the TSJ, that's the court, announced a period of 15 days to review the data and question actors involved in the process. All 10 candidates, as well as legal representatives of the 37 political parties that appeared on the ballot, they do have more than one party, they just don't win, have been summoned to appear before the court in the coming days, with court president Carislia Rodriguez warning of legal consequences for not showing up. Basically, they all got subpoenaed. It's like, look, show us your evidence, and we'll look at it, and we'll figure it out. And the opposition won't do it. Everyone else did, but the people who say they won won't show their data. The hardline opposition and the Maduro's party has shown their data, but only to the judges. Like, they haven't publicly thrown it out there. So that is a possible criticism one could have.
Essentially, it's the fact that it's like, when because they're so desirable, what they have is so desirable to the rest of the world, America, Britain, France, that all of our allies that want the things and stuff and think they're entitled to it, is it's always going to be like election coup dispute, and that's why we go through this cycle over and over and over again every single time. You've heard this before.
Yeah.
This is not the first time you've probably heard this, but to know that it's like
just kind of stopped working.
Yeah, it's just exactly. But the surprising part is, let me get my words out. The surprising part is how much impact and influence this has on the United States economy and in futures, oil futures, money futures, things like this, and how much money and power and influence does the United States want to put into this to get control of it without making it obvious. Which at this point, I'm kind of surprised they even bother, because it seems like, we're really in the era of we do what we want at this stage. So I'm surprised that, it hasn't been a Libya situation, a Gaddafi situation, where they're just like, he's an evil, awful dictator and he was going to mass destruction us all. And like Saddam and all the other bad guys from words that you remember. And, I'm really surprised. And I think that's probably coming. I think it's kind of a situation where it's like, we're going to get to the point. We're almost there. If we're not there, we're getting there. We're getting to the point where we're just going to, claim eminent domain over all of it.
People, various nations, like they pay attention to when those things happen. I think a lot of people looked at Syria and Libya, and I'm hoping those are the kind of the last ones. Whenever it seems we talk about nothing ever happens, some of the reasons I assume, I'm just kind of like psychoanalyzing. This is all just speculation if I have to think about it here. But if I'm a world leader and I know what happens to world leaders who like step out of line too far in the opinion of the United States and don't have enough political backing and like political capital behind them to make those moves, you see what the consequences can be. So I wonder what kind of moves people would make if that threat wasn't looming, because it's like a lot of people are kind of like, stand perfectly still and just let the U.S. keep falling apart. I don't want to be one of the people who gets thrown out of a helicopter.
Right. Yeah, so, like they're like the U.S. is the T-Rex, and they're like just be still and let it happen around you, but don't get eaten.
I mean, they do it to their allies. We freaking have Ukraine isn't it just such a great country? Isn't Ukraine just having an awesome time? Weren't they so much better off now than they were 3 years ago? Right. Like Zelensky, I think at some point he's gonna have to either live in some kind of weird exile, or he'll end up in a jail. Or
yeah, and these people that align themselves with the United States or take the deal or ask to be part of something, they, I think they see the money and the power right up front, and it's the deal with the devil. It quite literally is, because they don't see how this is going to end up.
Juan Guaido kind of got off light, where he just there's some videos of him getting like viciously heckled and yelled at in Venezuela when people notice him in public, like in some cafes. And now he's exiled, but he's going to have a pretty decently cushy life in Miami. He has a professorship lined up where they're giving him $40,000 on the books per year, and then I'm sure he gets a little stipend. He's like, all right, good shot. Enjoy the rest of your retirement on the bench.
Yeah, it didn't work out exactly why we wanted. Maybe you guys should have backed a different horse. Whatever.
That's the best case, is that you don't get murdered. you just kind of fade away.
Okay. Was that your final thought on the matter, or am I cutting you off?
Well, let me try to read the U.S. What the U.S. has done, which is at the end of this thing. So, Gonzalez did not appear in court on Friday. Instead, Gonzalez and Machado issued a statement on Monday, unilaterally declaring the former as president-elect and calling on the police and armed forces to follow his orders. Exactly like Guaido. He's like, look, I'm the president now. Do what I say. That position seemed at odds, however, with the updated stance from the U.S. Department of State. This is what the gold nugget in here, that appeared to walk back its earlier recognition of Gonzalez as the victor of the presidential election. In response to a question, U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that the Biden administration had not recognized Gonzalez as president, a departure from the position assumed by the Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who declared Gonzalez as the winner of the election. So it's like, well, we said he was the winner of the election, but we didn't say he was the president, and now we don't really want to talk about it. Miller instead...
Pretty deja vu situation with Juan Guaido from a few years ago, so we're just always going to do that, I guess.
Miller
say it.
instead you just say we recognize him and then hope it goes from there.
Yeah, hope people just take your word for it. Like, yeah, the U.S. said so.
I've seen like meme things where it's like China recognizes Bernie Sanders as the rightful president of America. It's like because it means about as much. It's like you can say it all day.
Yeah.
Miller instead pointed to ongoing mediation efforts by Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia. He further emphasized the need for Venezuela to transition back to democratic norms, stopping short of calling for Gonzalez to take office. Leftist presidents Lula da Silva, Petro, and Lopez Obrador, which is Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, have rejected foreign interference and emphasized Venezuelan sovereignty, as well as like people keep seeing it not really work, and they get like a tiny bit bolder and a tiny bit. It's like, well, they couldn't do it to Bolivia, they couldn't do it to Venezuela. Maybe we can all just calm it down, which is what I would prefer also.
Yeah.
Emphasize Venezuelan sovereignty as well as the need for all parties to pursue a Venezuelan-led solution to the dispute because it's their country. At the same time, they have demanded greater transparency regarding the results, which I think is, yeah, responsible, very reasonable. It goes on a bit. They were like, there were protests, and then there were also counter protests. I had this picture where, because everybody saw the whole like, look at these horrible things in Venezuela. The people are over it. They want to go lynch Maduro in the streets because they hate him so much. And it's like, well, I mean, here is a pro Maduro protest that happens. Well, I guess anti-protest.
Yeah, no, the ones you never see. You know that there's actually like 5 times as many people in support of Maduro in the streets.
In those protests, according to Maduro, at least 2 National Guards members were killed and 106 injured. And that's also a weird stat to look at. It's not it's like nothing is a certain was this or wasn't this severe government repression. But when you look at the supposed severe government repression and it's members of the military and police that are getting killed, it does sway my opinion. Because, I mean, man, we really got upset that on January 6th, some police officers later died. Like no one was beaten to death on scene, but one guy killed himself. A couple of guys I think had like heart attacks.
Right.
But like, I mean, look, some of the opposition supporters in Venezuela beat 2 National Guards people to death in the street. Actually,
I guess.
So, like, do we have great sympathy now for one side? Like in the U.S., when you protest, the cops kill you.
Right.
In other countries, occasionally. The protesters
other ones
kill
are
the
just
cops.
like, hey, it happens.
That is all I have on Venezuela elections.
So I wanted to shout out
screen.
the chat a little bit because I saw you guys were having a pretty good conversation here. If I could get my scroll button to work. So, hey, are you a time traveler too? You're got a lot of comments in here, and as well as Joy Kilo. Oh no, that's.
No, Tutu, if you didn't hear us for at the very top of the hour, we talked about the Elon Trump conversation, and we both were like, didn't know.
Tutu that asked about what we thought about the Trump convo, Trump Elon convo. Yeah, so if you want to roll back, you can hear us talk about that.
We have very few thoughts because we didn't really listen. It's just funny people pretended it was important.
Right? Yeah, exactly. I quoted Drill, so you can go back and hear that. Nathan Coyote says, "I used to be a Democrat. Now I just feel bad for the people who won't shut up about Trump." And yeah, that's exactly how we feel bad too. Like they just really haven't come to their own conclusion yet. So yeah, thank you guys for jumping in with your comments. We appreciate it. We try to shout you out when we get the chance. So and like to know what you're thinking and are glad to have you. So we appreciate you as far as that goes. Well, so another thing that is plaguing America and probably most of the developed world is it goes by a term that you may or may not have heard. It's sort of growing in popularity, and that is called enshittification. And that is a real term. I don't know if you find it in the dictionary just yet, maybe, but it essentially is encapsulating the idea that everything, as you may have noticed, about American life is turning to shit. So that is everything is becoming enshittified. And that goes everything from like the quality of food. We're talking about also like things like shrinkflation to the quality of literally every product that you buy or service that you buy, or having to be shoehorned into services you don't want. You can look back into a few years ago and be like, why can't things just be like they were before? I'm a person. This is sort of my boomer thing is I hate streaming. I think streaming is shit because I'm a TV person. Like I love TV movies, and I want to go back to a time when it's like, yeah, you had to subscribe to television, but it worked. It was a functioning system, like it. But we get to this point where it's like, because again, I mentioned this earlier in the hour, we are really living in, and this especially is the ultimate goal of Reaganomics. Like this is where this was going to, the whole "you will own nothing and you will be happy about it" situation, by making you beholden to these companies specifically. If you want something, then you have to jump through all these hoops to do it. Because when you started to see the rise of streaming in particular, as an example, you were looking at a lot of companies that were outside of the sphere of production, television, movie production, typically.
Like Apple.
Yeah, your Apple TV, your Amazon, your Netflix. Those things weren't part of the traditional studio system that controlled what you were able to see. Your MGM, Fox, Paramount, all this. Those people generally held control over it. So in a way, the disruption of that system was good. But you also found the reason that they're doing this is because they wanted to cut the middleman out, which was the cable companies who you subscribe to, and then they would get a cut of the subscription fees and the running fees, and there had to be all these deals in between. But what you got out of that, is like, yeah, you were paying a stupid amount of money for mostly crap, and it's way worse now if you have a television subscription, because there's just nothing there and it's basically dying. But you could watch whatever you wanted. Shows premiered on those channels. Like you didn't have to try to figure out where things were, and stuff runs 24 hours a day. Sometimes if like you're working or something and you just want to turn on a rerun of an old show, you don't have to sit around and think about it. Like, what streamer has this show? Okay, I have to keep turning it on every like. And and you just could let something run and let something go, or listen to a music channel or something like that. So I'm a type of person who thinks that fucking sucks. But that's an example of where we are, because now you hear the term late stage capitalism thrown around a lot. But that kind of implies that it's at the end of as far as it can go, where I am of the opinion that we are nowhere near as far as bad as capitalism can go before something changes. And we really do not have the public support for socialism as that we wish and hope that we did. So I look at it more like runaway capitalism, where when the government is controlled by corporations, they make the rules. That's why every other day you hear about some really bad recall where people die because of listeria or salmonella or something, or today it was baby formula. And because they've gotten to a point now where they've done so many things, these corporations, to get the government to do their bidding, that they we know that regulation in most of these industries is basically not even happening anymore. And that allows these the unmitigated raking in of money that these corporations are able to do across the board, not just your pharma, your gas and oil, but literally everything top to bottom. Now they can afford to say, like, all right, we'll take the hit, we'll just take the fines, because we're not going to put legislation in against us or do anything against us. Boeing openly killed whistleblowers and nothing happened. Like, they just do it now. Like, they just do this shit right out in the open. And I think that we're all kind of living in a little bit of a shock from that, because we used to have a little bit of a cat and mouse game as far as with politics. And with people where at least the politician would come out and lie and say, we're going to clean up the rivers. And we're like, yay, rivers. And now they're like, fuck you and your rivers, okay? We sold the river. Like, that's what it basically comes down to. So you're seeing this across the board. I know you all have probably heard of fast fashion, except for if, I don't even know what fast fashion would be now, because if you go and buy the same product you bought maybe 3-5 years ago from just a leading store, you're going to find the quality is garbage of the exact same product from the exact same companies. And so, like, I don't know, if you go to like a fast fashion outlet, I guess that shit's just made of paper at this point. But because I have done that. I have literally, like, there are certain brands, being of a larger variety of person, there are certain brands that suit me a little bit better. So I will seek out those same brands of things if I need, to buy something the same again. And I have bought the exact same product from the exact same store a couple of years in between, and then the older item is still outlasting the newer item that I bought to replace it with. So that is the kind of situation that's going on. And you may have heard recently, I know I'm kind of ping-ponging around, but this covers so much. You might not realize how it's all really connected in this way. But Adobe, who brings you Photoshop and all of their other stuff. And unfortunately, I'm a Photoshop user because I have always been a Photoshop user. But they recently actually did get in trouble because, but they probably won't really face consequence. Again, they just take the hit. Because now everything is by subscription model, where you used to just be able to purchase or pirate the program or whatever, and that's that's their way of raking in more money. Well, they were signing people up for the most expensive tier of their subscription fee, and they weren't telling people. And we're not talking, like, oh, $5 a month. We're talking hundreds of dollars, right? So they actually did get popped for that. But like I said, nothing will come of it. They'll take the fine, and then they'll just figure out another way to do it. So, even when you hear about people getting in trouble for these kind of things, they're not. And it's the exact same thing with this whole shrinkflation thing and the highly inflated prices of food and things like that. Because now you're hearing stories about like Target and White Castle being like, we're bringing our prices down from before the pandemic. And it's like, oh, you could just press a button and do that. Like that was just possible all the time. So you have the mainstream media doing the bidding of these companies, because they pay for the commercials, so they pay vis-a-vis they pay for these people to do what they want them to do. Then you get the narrative that like, oh, there's nothing can be done. Eggs are just really expensive now, guys. There's no explanation for it. It was because sickness, and also chickens probably, and chickens are stingy bitches. So like they will give you the stupidest runaround but treat it like it's real. So they kind of had everybody believing like shrinkflation and supply chain issues were real. None of that shit was real. It was a manufactured crisis to take advantage of people at their very lowest point in life. And that all kind of colludes in with the political system because, again, and we've referred to this before, there was a documentary in 1974 that we've talked about a few times, where it was women in the prison system. And there was a woman who was talking about the need to take care of her life and feed her children. She says, I didn't care that Nixon was fucking up. I had kids to feed, and that's where everybody is. If you get people into these situations where they don't have union support, they're making sub-minimum wage, particularly disabled people, it's just totally allowed to give them $2 like an hour, and that's allowed. Getting people into the prison system for free labor. If you get people at their lowest and you nickel and dime them and really just scrape them down to nothing, then they become happy little quiet workers who are too tired to fight back. And that's where we are again. This has cycled back, which I guess you could point back to the 70s, with this happening with gas and things like that. But we are in a situation where this has happened again, or at least it's going on. People are being squeezed so badly. We're talking, why is every industry got a problem? Why is there a housing crisis? Why is there a food crisis? Why are there food deserts? Because these corporations are manipulating the situation to keep people from having what they want. And that's even, I was surprised to learn recently, to go even further with that, and is that, because it's like, oh, well, of course, when you think about it. But I found out recently that a lot of people don't have computers anymore. And especially young people, they rely entirely on their phones. So having a computer apparently is turned into something like they're not computer literate. And, that there's a lot of media literacy issues that go along with that. It's like, it's like somebody saying, oh, well, I lost all my stuff. I had a problem, this or that. And it's like, well, why didn't you back it up and to your second hard drive and this and that? Like the computer people are confused about this, but then come to find out that people not only can they not afford them because the companies are inflating the prices, but it's the companies that make the apps and it's the phone companies that are doing this because they are making people, dependent by inflating the prices. They price people out and they make them dependent on their phones, so that don't take you to a website or don't let you perform a function. They take you to an app. So again, money is changing hands between these people, and you end up victimized for it. And then also putting everything by subscription. You used to, when you would buy a computer and if it was a PC, you would have the standard Microsoft Suite, which was Excel and Word and PowerPoint and all of these things. Now you have to literally like buy a subscription to that as well. And and by taking the computers out of people's hands, then they don't know how to BitTorrent, they don't know how to pirate, so that just gives them what they want as far as that goes. So, and AI is also playing a really big hand in this as well because it is taking jobs away from people, um, at a staggering rate. And that will go across all industries. And I know I've always sounded like an alarmist about this, but it's like, okay, so like the writing and the art industries were the first ones affected. But maybe you saw over the weekend, I don't know who released the footage, but they compared, there's posts out there right now that are comparing that the AI footage that somebody made in 2023 and it's like Will Smith, like this really bad looking Will Smith, like eating spaghetti like crazy, versus like this completely realistic, totally believable, indistinguishable from reality woman speaking like at an event. We're talking months apart, and that's what I've been saying this whole time. Is that this is going to destroy things faster than anybody's seen. This is not just an art. It's like, well, I'm not an artist. I'm not a writer. I'm an engineer. Those are some of the things that are going to go really, really fucking fast. Like in automation, in AI, they're not the enemy, but the unmitigated way that corporations are going to get to use that technology is your enemy, and the government will not do anything to get in the way of it. So I'm going to give Jared a chance to comment on this because I've kind of gone off the rails here a lot. Because I could pontificate about this kind of thing forever, but it's nice to get another version of a different point of view.
When there are, this is an argument I would make. Actually, the conditions for communism exist currently; like they are already present, and I think this is the core of from the beginning when AI was becoming a thing, and we started seeing more, especially like in the artistic realms, the observation that we're teaching robots to do the things that like the human creativity part, the things that they're actually fun to do, and then we as humans are like mopping the floors and doing the manual labor, where really that just needs to be kind of inverted. Have the robots do all of the menial soul-sucking labor that does not actually need to be performed by humans anymore. The conditions already exist for us to move past that. And like this is going to sound like I want to get a ton of people fired from their jobs, but and yes, kind of, but not in a like you have to go be destitute now because your horrible menial job has been taken away, but more like that menial job was not really necessary for you as a person to be doing in the first place. So let us use our current level of technology, not some far off future. We have the technology right now. Let us use that technology to free you and give you tons of free time to go like live your life while a robot can. Starbucks could be a giant vending machine. Yep. McDonald's could be a giant vending machine. Basically, like most of our food at this point, except for like I guess high-end restaurants where like a chef is actually making the like
and you're paying for the experience of that more than you're paying for the actual food.
You pay for the and right now you pay for the Starbucks experience, and that necessitates paying somebody as little as humanly possible to do work that doesn't really need to be done. Half the bathrooms that are getting cleaned by somebody don't really need to be cleaned because you don't really need to be going to that like Starbucks doesn't have to be an inside building. And even
probably,
if it does,
that's the kind of thing too, is people shouldn't have to do those jobs. If a robot can do your job, you shouldn't have to be doing it as a person.
We should be automating away.
The automation in the AI is not the enemy. That is the future. We're going there no matter what. It's the way that they're going to be allowed to, but like the corporations, the way that they're going to be able to use it without any kind of stop blocks put into the way, any kind of regulation put in the way, is where the problem is going to come in, because it's exactly what he just described. Now this is enslaved people, to now we're going to have to fight over a very few amount of jobs when these companies who are seeking, robotic and automated workforces are going to reap these benefits like crazy, because they now see, that they can get, non-human workforces who aren't entitled to breaks or vacations, who don't take sick days. So at that point, it gets to where, they're just seeing these dollar signs. So
reduce the work week to 1 day, increase minimum wage to $70. Sounds like I'm just like BSing or goofing over here. Actually do it. That
Because
would
these companies, if you think that they're bad now, wait till they're making like hundreds and millions of billions of dollars based off of labor that used to go to people, because now they're saving all of that. And they're going to be even more powerful, and the lobbies will be even more powerful, and the government will be even further nil. And not that they would stop it anyways, but the idea is that, these things, these social benefits and social safety nets that we should already have and very easily could support based on just how things are right now,
yep.
could very easily be like compensated for hugely by just charging a robot tax, quote unquote, a robot tax. Any company say, okay, you are free to automate however you see fit, but if you fire X amount of your workforce or whatever, and now you have 24-hour labor operations or whatever, and you're costing the system this much water and electricity, and you're melting glaciers at this rate of speed, then you have to now pay, extra amount of money back to the government, and then pay that to people to literally just exist. If you live in this country, now here is your universal basic income check based off of the fact that you don't have, your industry's gone. I'm facing that now. Like, my industry is in shambles as a medical technical writer, science education, that kind of thing. Like, there is nothing there. Like, the people have literally given it to, AI to make really bad shit. And then we talk about, it's almost like these companies have come out ahead of time with a very bad AI to be like, haha, six fingers, or haha, Google AI told you to put glue on your pizza, because they were really not wanting you to. There was a misdirect, so that, like, when you see this video of the side by side of the crazy looking Will Smith eating a spaghetti next to a fully autonomously looking human person that's indistinguishable from reality, then that, that you realize this has all been working in perfect harmony for these companies who are working together to bring the real shit in. Because if they can do that, there's not going to be call centers anymore. There's not going to be helplines. There's not going to be manufacturing jobs anymore. Um, there's always an argument that, like, music and art and writing and stuff really is ultimately protected. But we're
Yeah.
talking about, like, across the board, all other industries are going, and it's going
We're
to happen
almost
right in front of your face.
we're already in a post-resource scarcity world and have for a long time. Like, there is more than enough food to feed every single human. There is more than enough everything to, like, we could all have a comfortable life if we had a better a more responsible. I'm not trying to make it moral, because damn it, even if you want to be an asshole, it still just makes more sense in every way. Like, a more sensical, logical distribution of resources. We're almost on a post-labor, where, like, as we think of it, like, post-menial labor
It
world.
could be amazing. It could be an amazing
We
thing to
already
be
have
happening.
we got most of the stuff. I mean, look at an Amazon warehouse. If you have one of the more advanced ones, which this isn't, okay, I guess this exists in the U.S. It's not even I run around and grab the stuff anymore. It's you stand in this square and the shelf drives up to you and
Yeah,
you move a thing and then it drives away again. Like,
yeah, and
then you automate that thing. Pretty soon you're gonna have these massive warehouses where it takes maybe 2 people to run them, and that's like tag teaming out.
yeah.
Show up once a week. We got to boil the work week down to one day. Not a
Well,
joke.
it's like, it's people don't even really need to do it unless it's some kind of a supervisory role,
Yeah,
that say,
and we
like,
all
is
do a
everything
little.
working, because look, there's even, you don't see it very much, I don't, but probably a lot of you have heard of it, that they're even working on, self-driving semis, like somebody controls it from a different location. And obviously the end game always of the whole ride share thing was to get people out of it and to make it automated ride shares.
Yeah.
So this was always coming. This was happening. But and that literally is the Jetsons' future. But what nobody in the Jetsons told you, or none of it, was that it was going to be attached to this idea of runaway capitalism. That nobody was going to do this responsibly. There was going to be
Because it's
no
like a single
social
owner. Like,
responsibility.
you boil that down to, like, something that would be like an entire industry. Like, do you think your entire cab industry should be owned privately and controlled by a single entity? That's what you get with Uber. Well, should I say, with, like, private enterprise, as
Yeah.
opposed to, this is our town, this is our fleet of autonomous cabs, and we as a town own, operate, and reap benefit from them, and the resources stay with us here, not, oh, some guy way far away who happens to own the most stock in the autonomous cabs. They just get full, complete control. They are the god of cabs.
Yeah, the cab lord. But then that's the thing too. It's like, if you say, like, okay, if you still aren't convinced that this is coming, like, okay, put it into this context, because I know probably this is gonna like this would set conservatives off like crazy, and probably liberals too. But it's like China, say China
China.
came
They're
over,
doing
like
it.
was quietly buying up all of the manufacturing industry, or all of the engineering industry. They were just buying every single aspect of it, buying, and now they're in control of it. Everything, everything. People were going out of jobs like crazy. It's the exact same concept. You would be really upset about that if you or your family member or whatever had lost not only the ability to go to work every day, but that there were any other jobs in your field. And now you would be really pissed off about that. It doesn't matter who the boogeyman is. There's always a boogeyman. And now it's robots. But except that we should be embracing it in a socially responsible and fiscally responsible way, but we're not going to be. So we get to this point where it's like, we talk about unionize everything. We talk about rights. We talk about workers' rights. We talk about tenants' rights, people's rights, unionizing beyond labor. So we're gonna look at it like, okay, now we would do that now to kind of go against the government who's working against the people. But then we're gonna, when we get to the like 10 years from now, the government's basically gonna be no, like it's gonna have no sway, no input. They're just gonna be just, but just by looking at the trends of things now, where they don't even lie about what they don't have platforms, they're not lying, they're not doing anything, they're just gonna sit there and like throw pencils at the ceiling, and that will be their official position on everything, because the corporations will be so much more greatly in control of don't you love it when you hear giant booming sounds around you and you had no idea what it
Oh
is?
crap! Are you say I couldn't hear me getting thunder or something
No,
else?
it's totally sunny. It's just like I got, sometimes you just hear really
Oh.
weird shit. One time a plane literally crashed like one neighborhood over, and I
Whoa.
heard it, but I didn't realize it was a plane because there had been a tree trimming crew back there, and I thought it was still there.
Oh man.
So sometimes it's just like, is this the big one? I never know what's going on. Anyways, I'm so easily distracted in case you didn't notice. But we could be doing it like, we wanted to do this at one point, but we never got to it. But we'll have to do the Utopia show for real sometime, like on our year anniversary or something like that. But we kind of both agree that it makes people sad to talk about utopia. But at the same time, you got to really sometimes face what's possible. And that's the way I feel about it. Is I want people to realize there better is possible, and that's where the leftists are coming from. It's not all like, ripping our hair out. It's just that we just really can't stand things how things are. We're just like, the hypocrisy is too much, the insanity is too much. It's just we can't deal with it. And everybody, we're talking about in the chat, they're talking about, and I actually have this in my notes too, the surge pricing at grocery stores now with their digital pricing, how they're going to start, profiling you based on how much they think they can charge. So when you go pick it up off the shelf, it's more than when you get it, pay for it at the register. Shit is out of control. So if we start looking at things about, kind of, you have to get kind of conspiracy wall on this and start connecting the dots with the yarn, because it all is connected when a society functions well or functions poorly or functions well for only a certain amount of people. And we've heard this story at the with other empires, and usually in history that means that when you get to where we are now, that they're dying. It's a dying empire. But I think at this point we've got a lot longer to go before anybody could really possibly organize enough to circumvent this stuff from happening. So we really got to get on the building of the unions and collectives and committees and things like that, because eventually it's just gonna, we don't have regulations on the most basic of things. You could just go get it on an airplane and both will fall out. Like you're gonna get poisoned if you eat shit. And like there's like climate change is coming for everybody. So like nobody's doing anything. And it's like, well, why is our government not doing anything? Because they're paid not to do anything. If you have somebody like, a lobby or a PAC, like APAC, like they're paying, they're paying for the right to get to decide what the government does. So when Jared picks up the guitar, it's like, all right, you guys shut up now. It's guitar time. Which is good, because it's good to cut me off at certain points. I will keep going.
I
So
think that finance capital is going to be when I say finance versus industrial, like fire industries.
yeah.
What is it? Insurance, real estate. Blah, blah. OF is just finance. But like I'm currently reading stuff from economist Michael Hudson, who people who I respect seem to respect. There's so many people out there to read, and you never know. It's like, am I reading someone who is actually completely wrong about everything? Hopefully not. A lot of people seem to respect Michael Hudson. He illustrates, and because it seems so like simple and obvious, like, is it actually just that? Where he talks about our, the current boom bust cycle of we have we just we run our economy used to be based off of industry, and you would give loans because you expected some kind of tangible product to come back. Like, we are loaning you X. If you go back to the bailouts, we were considering bailing out, what is it, the banking industry and the auto industry. And as much as everyone's like, man, it feels bad to just give Ford a ton of money basically for being irresponsible, at least at the end of the day, Ford produces automobiles. As opposed to the financial sector, where it's just some numbers in a spreadsheet change, but you don't receive any tangible product or tangible benefit to the populace. Well, you might get a loan. It's like, well, they don't really give loans to like me, because like we just talked about, they don't really give loans for stuff except mortgages. Mortgages are like a
Unless they
giant
think that
percentage of it.
they're gonna get something back out of you vis-a-vis production, something like that.
The whole cycle of financing and debt, and how they just keep stacking debt on people, and then how do they pay for the debt? Well, you do another loan to then pay for the debt, which, so we kind of have our economy, the whole Western world's economy is just like a big Ponzi scheme, and it falls apart every once in a while as we keep noticing, wow, there's all these crises when this whole stack falls apart, and then the government just dumps money into it to try and balance it. So then next time it's even worse and even worse and even worse. So like, this is inevitably going to fall apart to a degree that it actually gets a rebuild or some big things change, because you can't run a society off of this finance capital casino nonsense. He talks
Yeah.
about it like, in ancient Mesopotamia, how did they deal with debt? And I mean, the fact that across many cultures, this has a history in old Christian civilizations as well. There was essentially a cycle of every 5, 7, 10, depending years, you would just basically, everyone gets a bankruptcy. Everyone is wiped clean of their debts. The debts are gone. Also, and these debts were for things like, it's like you would pay in grain for various services you did through the year, because like the harvest isn't every day, so you're not walking around with like, oh, here's like a bushel, here you go. Wow. It's like you settle it all at the end of the year, and then every once in a while the debts get wiped out. Why? Because if you hold someone to a debt, you kind of like, they become your debtor. Back in the day, that would mean like literally they'd have to go to your house and work for you. They'd become your servant. So if you have a giant portion of your population, because inevitably it becomes everybody, the debt cycle continues like ours does, everybody becomes like a debt servant. We all kind of are right now. What does most of your money go to? Does it go to buying stuff? Or does it go to financing your own debt, paying down your mortgage, student loans, health care, all these basics that where you're just basically being charged rent? You definitely own nothing, and you're definitely not happy.
Right.
So if you're stuck doing that, you can't contribute to the actual economy. If you're going to ancient Mesopotamia, you can't like help build the city walls, or be in the army, or like do the basic functions that make your society keep going. So that knocking out people's debt wasn't even, oh, we're so good in our hearts, we're just nice people, so we're knocking out your debt. It's like, no, it was for practical survival reasons. You
Good
got to
economic
do that.
policy. Yeah. And then now we're so hung up on, the whole, oh, we couldn't possibly let anybody out of any kind of debt, because what kind of precedent would that's so socialism,
Have an
Like,
economy actually
why
based on
socialism?
something. Have an economy actually based on something, and then if you have all these rando finance debts where it's, heck, Michael Hudson will talk about where if you gave a loan that is so impossible to pay back that like the person doing it has no hope of ever, it's like, that's on you. You lose. You made a bad loan. Don't
Right.
make a bad loan next time. Like, obviously that guy who lives in a trailer isn't going to be able to pay you back 200,000 or whatever from this payday loan scam that started
Right.
out as 1,000. You know, if you can't pay a $2 million healthcare bill, that's clearly
Never gonna happen.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
That's on you now for making bad choices about how these
Fix-
policies are run.
fix
And
your
then
stupid industry and then come back to me.
Yeah, and then where we kind of ended up, how we get from the ancient days to now, is like, well, people keep figuring out how to regame the system. So they, instead of letting people out of their debts, or doing any kind of relief, or offering them any social safety nets vis-a-vis the government. I've used that expression a bunch this hour, but
That class is able to build power forever because it just cycles. Because if you
yes,
already have some power and then just go, oh, and
yeah, they
they've been
just keep
allowed to just run
investing
out of
in
control.
themselves, through stock buybacks and all the checks and balances that used to be in place 10, 15, 20, 50 years ago about how to keep business working for people and people working, like those things are just going away and going away and going away at the behest of these corporations that own all of the capital.
Because they can
and
charge rent on it. They want to
yeah,
be able
and
to charge
generate
you
the
rent on everything.
capital because they have realized that they are the ones that are in charge of everything. And if you can afford to get a politician to do your bidding where they would or would not agree to stop you from what you're doing, and then you just keep adding zeros until they agree that they're not going to stop you, then that's where we are now. And that's my concern, is that like people think, oh, this is end stage capitalism. That implies that, in a couple, 3, 10 years, things will be better. No, it doesn't. I think it can get a whole lot worse before it gets better. But
They're
if people start
pretending.
kind of waking up to this idea, and that's why we got to do the Utopia show at some point. But if people start waking up to the notion that things can be better, then maybe they will be inspired to try to, just at least alter their thinking. If nothing else, if you can't do anything, if you're like, well, I can't do anything, but when more people start losing their jobs and realizing, then that's going to be a big movement here, and something will have to give at that point. But I tell you what, speaking of something I'll have to give, it's going to have to be my mouth, because we are now going to get to hear a tune from Jared. And so thank you for joining us again today. You can always check our past shows out on our YouTube channel, Last Minute Politics, and we're on Twitch, we're on Twitter. I can never get it all straight. We're out there. You can find us. So if you've got questions, comments, or things you'd like to hear us talk about on the show, hit our Twitter DM. And otherwise, thank you for sitting with us for another week, and we will be back with you next week to talk about whatever horrible things are going on in the news. So take care of each other, everybody, and do the best you can, and try to get through. And we will see you next week. So.
I don't remember which of the 3 John Hartford songs that I learned that I have done or not, so if this is a repeat, I'm sorry. And if it's a song you liked, then you're welcome for the repeat. Where does an old-time riverman go after he's passed away? Does his soul still keep a watch on the deep for the rest of his river days? Does he then come back as a channel cat, or the wasp that light on the wheel, or the birds that fly through the summer sky, or the fish swimming under the keel? Where does an old-time pilot go after he's stood his last watch? Does he fall by the ear, the man who steers, saying, hold her on that notch? There's a gentle sneeze in the river breeze, saying, son, I'm going to bed. And they light their pipes and go off in the night. Or was it fireflies instead? Where does an old-time engineer go after he's cooled down, gone up the hill to never come back on the quiet side of town? Does his soul live on in the engine song while the striker checks the gears? Will he still afloat on an old steamboat after he's gone from here?